5 years ago, Marcy at the Gates premiered, which shows us the character of Marcy after seeing bits and pieces of her and mentions of her. And this was the episode that gave me the introduction of this show in general. And ever since then, I've been thinking of giving this show a chance along with the Owl House. And it really gave me a growing interest in this show. Even though my original plans was to review the third temple later this year, that along with other projects have been changed, so it's not going to happen. But reviewing this episode as part of its 5th anniversary, honestly, I wouldn't miss this opportunity due to how this episode and the character Marcy gave me a great impression of Amphibia as I watch more and more and come back to this show whenever I get the chance. The episode begins with the main characters arriving to Newtopia, but the gates are locked. And this leads to them getting into trouble by more monsters, but this leads to the debut of Marcy, whom she saves Anne and the planters from the monsters, and the only way for them to get inside Newtopia is to stop the evasions where the monsters are coming from. Every time I remember this episode, it's not the fact that it was the first time I've witnessed Amphibia. It's the fact that this episode is mainly a showcase of what the human characters can do in this show, and sadly, when it comes to most fandoms, it's honestly the biggest draw of the entire fandom. Not to say that the other characters, mainly the planters, are underdeveloped, because there's a reason onto why there's a comic or book centering around them soon. I can't lie, the character design of Marcy is what got me hooked into the show, including Anne. And truth be told, watching this show back in 2020 wasn't easy. I had a difficult time following it. Even though I may have now, it doesn't change the fact that I only focused on the human characters and not the other characters. Granted, rewatching this series, I do see the point of view and development from the other characters, but even in fandoms that are the most healthy, they still have problems and there's no avoiding it. And the problem I'm gonna point out is the fact that the fandom, mostly the majority of it, views the Calamity Trio as the major draw, which is the truth that people just refuse to admit, but I have to admit it, especially with the many fandoms that I've witnessed. But let's go focused on the episode itself. Anne told Sprig about Marcy on how she isn't like Sasha for how she's portrayed in the finale of Season 1. With Marcy being clumsy and not being aware of her surroundings. And then when we get to see her in this episode, honestly, Sprig really sees Marcy completely different, judging of how his experiences with Sasha in the finale were not really the best, nor something that he would take lightly with Marcy. It's always implied that Marcy is mostly responsible for Anne and Sasha staying in this world much more longer due to her own problems in the finale of this season. But the way I see it, judging of how that she really endorses fantasy when it comes to her point of view, it's really difficult to not feel sympathetic towards her. Like, we can still blame her in the finale of Season 2, but at the end of the day, she just doesn't have the childhood or parents similar to Sasha nor Anne. And that really showcases the type of character that she is. I enjoyed Anne and Marcy reuniting. To, well, their chemistry is beyond healthier compared to Anne's relationship with Sasha. And when it comes to Marcy and Sasha's relationship, honestly, if it was more developed by having the two hang out more often than the final episodes of this show, then maybe I would probably see what they would have done with it when it comes to Marcy's point of view of Sasha's toxicity. But apparently that's the development that Anne needs. Every time I see Marcy in this episode, she really carries the episode, especially with how the mistakes that she makes by not paying attention, all the while nearly getting Polly in danger. Honestly, Sprig really kept his attention on Marcy the most when it comes to how his experiences with Sasha really gave him development as well. Granted, we never had an episode focusing on Marcy and Sprig together, but for how these 3 seasons were structured, it will probably require a 4th season, which makes sense onto why it didn't exist. But at the same time, you can also make the argument that a 4th season would have benefited fan service episodes, since that there were some kind of unique episodes when it comes to Marcy being around with the other characters. Since that the main focus is also centering around Marcy's relationship with Anne and Sasha, honestly, they really wanted to put more focus on that, which, despite their intents on making this the draw for the fandom, even if it wasn't intentional, they still did a good job in order to handle the relationship involving Marcy and Anne. And since that Anne is just trying to get used to teaming up with Marcy in comparison to Sasha, whom really put Anne and the others in danger, mainly in a more stressful situation due to the type of character that Sasha is. Despite getting distracted and not fully aware of her surroundings, she still didn't give Anne stress. I mean, granted, it made Anne panic multiple times, but at the same time, compared to the type of character that she is, differently compared to Sasha, honestly, I would still pick her over Sasha no matter what. Granted, it would be painful to look after her when it comes to her being oblivious, but at the same time, I've always get the impression that I would still prefer someone like her rather than a toxic friend of what Sasha was. And with her strategy of getting out into dangerous situations, truth be told, if she was a video game character and she has those abilities, I would play her 24/7. If this show came out around the time, well, making video games out of cartoons were relevant. With the following episodes centering around Anne and the planters going around in Utopia, and while Marcy is a main character in one of those episodes, it really makes me think that the gimmick of seasons 2 and 3 of being cut in half when it comes to the traveling to Utopia in the first half of season 2, along with the other focusing on Wartward with the characters returning, and with the following season being Anne's World and Armageddon in Amphibia, they really wanted to save those ideals when it comes to those locations in particular. And with this episode having the introduction of Lady Olivia, honestly, the fact that they have something for her when it comes to another character, LGBT is literally everywhere, and it's honestly surprising the fact that there was so much avoiding when it comes to executives from Disney that really makes this show untouched, despite the fact that there was still unavoidable criticisms from people on the internet. All I can say is that when it comes to Lady Olivia and the other character, if LGBT month happens for real next year, when it comes to the 2nd edition, I might review the season 3 episode. But we'll just see on how I feel, because it could happen, it could not, and that episode will happen despite the fact that it's mostly a team up. With that being said, this is an episode that I've remembered a lot more fondly, especially with it being 5 years old, and when seeing this episode again, it really gave me more of an understanding onto why Amphibia is one of the best cartoons when it comes to Disney Channel. And while I reviewed nearly all the good episodes from this show, including this one, if I'm ever going to do a Disney Channel marathon, which is unlikely, I would still review episodes from this show regardless. This is one of those shows that really grew on you in time, to the point that you always think that this show is really a lone wolf compared to the other Disney Channel cartoons that ends up getting the axe either later or too soon, or to the point that it's not even giving it a chance whatsoever. And this really feels like a rarity that isn't Calamity, and not in the Calamity way of what people see in this show. Mainly the draw of Anne, Sasha, and Marcy. Truthfully, every time I think of the word Calamity, I'm always going to think about this show, all the while avoiding the actual Calamity, if you know what I mean. I'm giving this episode a 9 out of 10.